Good. And we are live.
Okay. Welcome everyone to this meeting on the 24th of March of the Newburyport Historical Commission. Just give us a minute or two to make sure everyone is fully on board and connected, and the meeting will officially begin in just a moment. So, okay, and there are participants. Let's see what you got here. Okay. Okay. All right, well, I'll start my usual preamble, then I'll take an attendance of the commissioners. Pardon me here, I'm tangled up in my wires. So again, the March 24th, 2022 meeting of the Newburyport Historical Commission. The commissioners will have audio enabled, although they'll mute themselves when they're not speaking, just to avoid technical issues. If we have a public hearing, which we very well may tonight, one member of the public can be unmuted. Now, if there is a public hearing and you wish to speak, please use the Zoom function to raise your hand. I believe that would be *9 if you're on a telephone, but otherwise, if you're on a laptop or iPad or whatever, there's a control in the Zoom meeting to raise your hand. And you will also have to unmute yourself on your end. We'll unmute you on our end, but you also have to unmute yourself on your end to speak. And as with any public meeting, please state your name and address, and then try to keep your comments to a reasonable length. So that's that. I think we can move on to the roll. So the very first, I do this in alphabetical order. So I'm very pleased to welcome our newest commissioner, Andrew Bernhardt. Andrew, you're here, correct?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, that's Andrew Bernhardt speaking. Now, Malcolm, I don't see it. So are we missing Malcolm? Andy? Looks like he's not here. So we're going to assume that Mr. Carnwath, unless he should show up, I'm going to hang on a second. I want to just keep a note of who's here and who's not. So we're going to assume that he's probably absent. Okay. Mark Syndrome.
Present.
Thank you. Christopher Fay.
Present.
All right. Very good. Peter McNamee.
Present.
And Joe Morgan.
Present.
Oh, very good. And the chair, Glenn Richards, is speaking. Okay, we have one demolition delay public hearing tonight. This is for 9 Barton Street. So Andy, let's see, I think I know I saw Eileen Graff and the attendees. I see an MTC, so that's either Attorney Mead or someone from her company or firm. So can you allow their audio, Andy, for both Eileen and I assume MTC is Mead, Tolman, and that's the other one.
That's correct. They are able to speak if they'd like.
Okay. All right. Yeah, they're locally muted. Okay. So who would like to make a presentation? This is a house that apparently there was some discrepancy according to your submission as to exactly when it was built.
Mm-hmm. Hi, good evening, Mr. Chair. Actually, this is Ben Taylor from Mead, Tolman and Costa, 30 Green Street, Newburyport for the record. Also, I apologize. I do have 2 Zoom screens open again. My computer's microphone's still having issues, so I'm on actually a cell phone, which has a lot better microphone quality. So hence the Ben Taylor MTC thing.
Okay.
So with me tonight also is Eileen Graff, as you noted. And also the owners of the property, Chris Adam and Amber Klein Adam. So with that, could we go to the next slide, please? So just to do a quick historical overview, this structure was constructed in or about 1885, according to the district data sheets, and 1904, according to the assessor records. It is listed as contributing in the district data sheets with Italianate style architecture. There was no Form B for it. And really the structure first appears in the 1906 Sanborn map because the earlier Sanborn maps don't cover Barton Street. So really the focus tonight is the rear 1-story bump out on the structure, which you will see later on in the site plan, and also a assessor card, which we have included. So it's really a wide range of when we think that was added. because you'll see in the 1924 assessor map, it's not included in the footprint, but on the 1969 assessor card it is, meaning it was observed the year before in 1968. Regarding the bump out itself, as we've seen with some other properties in town, it was later added. It's not in good structural shape, especially compared to the original structure. It's relatively small sized. Its dimensions are 6.1 by 8.3 feet. And it's actually constructed on wooden posts that are about 4 inches by 4 inches. So we just move to the next slides quickly, please. So this is the 1906 Sanborn map. You can see in sort of the center right of the screen, or I put that little highlight. That's the structure there. Again, no rear bump out yet. So go to the next slide. So it's kind of reorienting. It's sort of in the center where the cursor is. Again, no rear bump outs. This is 1914, and this is the next slide. So zooming in a little bit, this is the 1924 assessor's map. Again, no rear bump out. And then finally, the next slide. So this is the assessor card. So I've highlighted the little bump out at the end there, or at the top. That is the rear of the structure. So we can see as of the 1969 card, the bump out was added. So now just the next few slides are photos of the property as exists today. There you can see from the rear of the yard, the rear bump out we're talking about. The next slide, please. So this is a little bit further back. This is actually from the rear of 60 Marlborough Street, the rear of their yard. They actually have submitted a letter of non-opposition. They also were kind enough to let us get a photo from their rear yard. So then the next slide, please. So this is from Marlborough Street as well. It's a little back and to the right. That driveway is the driveway for 58 Marlborough Street. So this is kind of the one corridor you can see the rear of the structure from a public way. So next slide, please. So this is from the right side of the property. The driveway's to the right of the structure. So really, until you get level with the rear of the house, you can't see the rear bump out. So the next couple of slides are just zooming in on the bump out. So that's a little bit closer. And then the next one, yeah, and then just moving up a little bit closer. So and now just the next few slides are the other elevations of the house, which you haven't seen yet. This is the front of the house and also the right side. There's the driveway referenced. And then here's the front and the left of the house. And then finally, the next slide is really the same view, but looking across from Barton Street. So there's no proposed changes to the right side, front, or the left, just to the rear. So with that, I'm happy to hand it back over to you, Chair, for the first part of the demolition review.
Thank you. Thank you, Ben. Okay, so the first, especially for the benefit of our newest member, I'll review very quickly. There are actually 3 decisions to be made. The first is whether or not the structure is, quote, historically significant. The second is, assuming it is voted historically significant, whether or not it's preferably preserved. And if that vote is an affirmative, then there is a public hearing on whether it's whether or not to impose a demolition delay or approve the plans. So I may have misstated the second vote is historically significant and preferably preserved. Yeah. Oh no, I'm sorry. Historically significant and considered for preservation. So we want to consider it for preservation, and then there's a public hearing in which public comment will be allowed and so forth. And then there's a final vote on whether or not to impose a demolition delay or actually I'm getting ahead of myself here. Typically if there's a vote on whether it's preferably preserved, which means that the demolition delay is put into place. However, if the plans as submitted and gone over during the and after the public hearing meet the approval of the commission, we can then take a last and fourth vote to allow or agree that the plans as submitted will not result in any adverse impact on the historical character of the property, et cetera. And we can vote to approve them and remove the demo delay. We've done this many times before, so most of you, excuse me, most of you are familiar with it. Again, but mostly for Andrew's sake. So the first vote is this structure historically significant? The fact that it's listed as contributing on the district data sheet certainly weighs in that favor, and it looks like it's certainly not in falling down condition, et cetera. Is there either a question, comment, or a motion to that it is historically significant? Any one of those three from any of the commissioners?
I'll make a motion that the structure as it is historically significant.
Okay, thank you. That was Mark, right?
Mark Sandron.
Yeah. Is there a second for that?
I'll second that.
Yeah.
That sounded like about 3 seconds.
Right.
I'll pick one. I think I heard Chris's voice in there. Okay, so I'll go around alphabetically. Andrew Bernhardt, your vote on that?
Yes, historically
thank you.
significant.
Yep, thank you. Mark,
Yes.
thank you. Chris Fay,
Yes.
thank you. Joe, excuse me, Peter McNamee.
Yes.
Thank you, Peter. Joe Morgan.
Yes, and as you said, Chair, it is also to be considered for preservation.
Well, that's our next vote. Right now, we're just agreeing that it is historically significant. So now we're going to.
And to be considered for preservation. That's right. Not to be preserved, but to be considered for preservation.
Yeah, well, in the past, we've been actually, how do I explain this? We've been separating those two because, so now there would,
Can you can you show the flow chart? Do you have that at your?
Well, I have it right here. Let me just see.
Okay, bring that up. So just to.
Oh, I see.
There are 2 votes, really.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess at times I separated it. Is it just the historically significant part? But Joe, looking at the flow chart, it looks like you're correct that that first vote, we're saying it's historically significant and considered for preservation.
Exactly.
So,
right. It can't hurt. It can't hurt to refer to that.
Yeah, I suppose.
It's very confusing. I mean,
Yes.
it's so.
And my sincere and humble apologies for any confusion I may have inadvertently caused. But so at this point, it's historically significant. It's going to be considered for preservation, and because of that consideration, we're going to have a further review to see if it's preferably preserved or not. That's that second vote. So now that that's been clarified, I don't want to assume that anyone's vote is going to change. So I'll just go through that again.
I'm happy to restate the motion if necessary.
Well, I kind of just did, Mark, but thanks anyway that we're voting it's historically significant and considered for preservation.
Okay.
So Andrew, are you still yes on that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And Mark?
Yes.
Syndrome? Okay. Chris Fay?
Yes.
Thank you. Peter McNamee? You lose Peter?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Joe Morgan?
Yes. Sorry for the confusion.
Yeah, no, totally not your fault, mine. And the chair is yes. Okay, so we're good on that. So I assume, was it Ben that did you or Eileen want to now present your demolition plan and so forth? So that can
Yes,
be
sure.
considered?
So, so we can just move on to the next slide. I'll make a few comments and then hand it off to Eileen. So, as I mentioned, the renovation plans are to remove the existing 1-story bump out at the rear and to construct a new 2-story addition or 2-story bump out, which will result in a larger footprint. This constitutes a roof line change. And one point of clarification I wanted to make, and I do apologize here, I was reviewing our cover letter that we submitted to the commission, and There was a note about the dimensions of the proposed bump out being 6.1 feet by 6.1 feet. That's incorrect. The actual bump outs, proposed bump outs dimensions are going to be 6.1 feet by 14.4 feet. So it sticks out 6.1 feet from the rear of the structure, and it's going to be 14.4 feet wide. So actually the bump out is adding 6.1 by 6.1 feet to the existing footprint. So that'll be clear when you see the site plan, but I just wanted to mention that. And also regarding height, the proposed bump out is 18 feet and 2 3/4 inches tall, which remains shorter than the main portion of the structure, which is 28 feet tall. And as we've seen in the photos, it's really not going to be visible from the Barton Street streetscape, and also not Marlborough Street apart from that one view corridor. So with that, I think I'm going to hand this off now to Eileen Graff to go over the design details.
Thank you, Ben. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. So could we slide to the site plan, which is the next slide? Thank you. So as Ben just mentioned, to help clarify the addition, so the one-story bump that exists that you've seen is to the right of the red box that you see currently in the middle of that site plan. And it exists as you saw in the photographs. And so we are just simply extending the footprint towards the driveway. And then in addition, we are going from a 1-story to 2 stories, which you can see in a diagrammatic drawing that Hancock has added to theirs, right there to the left. But basically showing that we are adding full height on the first floor, which was partly the compromise in the current 1-story space. Is it steps down, it's low in ceiling height. So it became a hard space to sort of work with, and thus making it full story. And then as you could see in that elevation, adding a second floor space as well. As Ben mentioned, the footprint is adding a small amount, 37 square feet in footprint. But I can go to the next slide to show you how that attaches to the existing structure. So
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm confused. But could you go back to 17 again for just a quick second? Eileen, on this plan in the middle
Yes.
there, it looks like the main body of the house comes almost all the way back to even with that bump out. Is there, but it looked on the, is that?
That's a great question. So what that actually is in footprint is even lower than that 1-story bump out is a bulkhead access.
Right,
so that's to the right that you see sort of where you lose the original form. It's basically everything on the back side is shown as existing is 1-story and low. Currently.
Right. Yeah, I remember the bulkhead now. Sorry about that. Yep.
That's okay. So then on the elevation drawing, this will explain it a little clearer. There's that on the top middle drawing, Mr. Chair, there's that bulkhead piece that you were referring to. So that's what we're seeing in the footprint. And so we're just, as you could see in the middle drawing below it, we're adding to the left, essentially in that zone that exists today as stairs. That's the zone that we're going to add more footprint, and then extruding that form upwards to create the second floor space. And so that's what you could see on the back side, keeping it pretty much centered on this gable end. As Ben mentioned, it's a really difficult thing to see. You really can't see from the Barton Street side, but not until you come around to the parallel block of Marlborough is when you can see it as shown in those photographs. And then on the bottom left, you could see it from the driveway side, adding just a window on the second floor. And then on the right side, you could see the side of the bulkhead, as well as a small window leading to that mudroom, and then upwards with the roof deck above. Currently, there's two double hung windows in the gable end on the 3rd level, and that would just be changed to be French doors to access that small rooftop deck. The intent is to match the existing wood clapboards that are on the main structure and match it in detail and in exposure of the clapboards. The windows would also match the existing. All the windows have been replaced. They're all clad Marvin windows, and so the new addition would match that. And then can't think of anything else to add as far as detailing. As you can see, for building height, we do not exceed the eave heights that are there with the structure, aside from the railing at that upper level. But otherwise, trying to keep very modest in the footprint, but help with the needs that Amber and Chris have for their family in the house. And with that, I will be happy to answer any questions the board may have. And Ben, I'm happy to pass it back to you if you want to finish the presentation.
Sure. Thanks, Eileen. Really well stated. So yeah, with that, I don't have anything else to add. I mean, I know that there's 3 more slides here. Those were just to sort of complete the presentation. If there were questions about the streetscape, those were additional neighborhood photos we had for the application. But with that, I think I'm happy to leave it. And like Eileen said, answer any questions the board may have. But with that, we request that the board release the demolition delay. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. I just had one real quick one. The new window on the new the second floor of this addition, obviously an unusual shape and location. Can you comment on what drove that decision?
Yeah, happy to comment on that. So on the you're talking, Mr. Chair, on the above the slider, correct, in the middle. So
Yes.
that happens to be in that is a master bath occupying that second floor space, and so that is within a shower space where they'd like to have some natural light coming in, but not full exposure. So that's thus driving the proportions of that window. On the driveway side, we have a double hung 2/1 to match the rest of the structure.
Right. Okay. Let me go around the board here. I'll, in no special order, get comments from my fellow commissioners. Just taking people at random. Mark, any thoughts, comments, questions?
I agree with your comment, Mr. Chairman. That window really looks pretty awkward in the sense that it doesn't fit the whole other set of windows. And while I understand the need for some degree of privacy, and the fact that this is on the rear of the building and probably not terribly visible, it certainly is a bit of a jarring sight.
Okay. How about Peter? Any thoughts or comments from you?
I would agree with Mark, but I don't necessarily think that's a hill that I would die on, given this is the rear of the building and it's not going to be terribly visible. And I can certainly understand the desire to have some natural light in the bathroom. If there were some way of at least balancing things, I don't know if what is adjacent to that shower space? Is that a closet on the other side, and that's why there's no window, just continuing that as sort of a clear story across there?
Sure, I can answer that question. So if you can imagine, if we are, if that transom happens to be in the wet space, the shower space, to the left of that would be a toilet, and then to the left of that a sink. So items that it's difficult to get, have enough room for, say, lighting, etc. So that felt like the first opportunity to add some window, aside from the double hung that faces the driveway. So that was where we landed with that. And that is also the most distant from adjacent neighbors. So it felt like if it were, say, to turn on beyond the non-driveway short side, that neighbor is in close proximity. So we knew we didn't want to open up to that direction.
Yeah. Anything else, Peter?
No, I do think it's a bit awkward from the outside, but like I said, I don't think
Right.
it's a hill that I would die on.
Okay. Joe, how about you? Joe Morgan?
I have no comments. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Christopher Fay, I don't think I heard from you.
No, I don't have anything further to add. I think, yeah, it's a good thing to point out about the window, but I understand the explanation.
Okay. And lastly, Andrew, any thoughts or comments you'd like to add? Or if it's already been said, then that's fine too.
It's been said, and I agree with Peter's statement.
Yep. Okay. The part about not being the hill to die on, that part of it, or the fact that the window seems odd, or both parts. Andrew, that was a question for you.
I'm sorry, mixing up the buttons. What was the question? I didn't hear it.
When you said you agreed with what Peter said, was it the part about it not being a hill to die on, the part that of the window
I
seem a
thought
bit
you heard
awkward, or
me. I
both?
said I'm not dying on a hill.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I missed that. Sorry. All right. Well, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, at this point, we've I'd like to allow any members of the public who have a comment to make to have that opportunity. So let me make some notes here. So I will briefly open a public comment period. So as I said earlier, if you would like to comment, please use the Zoom functionality to raise your hand so we can know that you do, and then we'll unmute you on our end, and you'll need to do the same on your end, and then you can be heard. So I'll allow a few seconds to see if anyone wants to raise a hand. If not, we'll move on. Looks like no one is jumping in. So you don't see anybody either. I take it, Andy or Katelyn?
Not at this time, Chair.
Okay, well then we'll close the public hearing period without comment. Pardon me, a little note here. So we need to now vote on whether this is preferably preserved, and then we can follow that with some further discussion as to whether we want to permit or approve the plans as submitted, or suggest that the applicant to see if they can make a change, which if we do that, we would give them some guidance as to what they might change to make it more acceptable. So first, let's take, is there a motion that the structure is historically significant and preferably preserved?
Yes.
Okay, that sounded like
Andrew.
Andrew, thank you, Andrew. Is there a
I'll
second?
second that, Chair. This is Joe.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Okay, going around the horn again. Let's see, 1 second. So Andrew Bernhardt?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Mark Syndrome? Mark Syndrome, do we still have you?
Yes.
Thank you. Christopher Fay?
Yes.
Thank you. Peter McNamee?
Yes.
Thank you. Joe Morgan?
Yes.
Thank you. And the chair is also yes. So that for now imposes a 1-year demolition delay. Is there any member have a comment as to the current plans? It sounds like I kind of got mixed sense that people feel that rear window is awkward, but on the other hand, understand what's driving that in terms of what the applicant is trying to do, and also being somewhat mitigated by its location, kind of very much out of sight. So at this point, I'd be happy to hear either further comment, or if someone would like to make a motion to approve the plan, what we can do is the motions are always phrased in the affirmative. So the motion would be to approve the plans as submitted, lifting the demolition delay. If to which you could, if you're against doing that, you would simply vote against, not in favor. Someone will like to make that motion?
The chair, this is Joe. I move that the plans as submitted for 9 Barton be approved and the demolition delay be lifted.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Just one second.
Senator, I'll
here.
second that.
Thank you. That was Mark, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, just one second. So again, going around for the roll call on this vote for to approve the plans as submitted. Andrew Bernhardt, your vote on that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mark Cindrone,
Yes.
thank you. Christopher Fay.
Yes.
Okay, Peter McNamee.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Morgan,
Yes.
thank you. Chair is also affirmative on that, so the motion passes. So Ben, I'm sure you understand that that means you and the applicant have good news. You can proceed. One quick last comment for that, if you could, this is both to Eileen and also Ben, if you could bring this back to your firm. This slide that we're looking at now, Eileen, I really appreciate the way you have made it very clear and very easy to compare the existing with the proposed. This is one of the best renditions I've seen of that comparison. Of course, a bit easier perhaps in this case because the addition is fairly small. But anyway, I just wanted to express my appreciation for you. It really helps this committee and commission to have.
Glenn, you muted yourself.
Oh, sorry about that. Where did I leave off? Sort of what you could hear.
Certainly you were praising Eileen, which I agree with.
Yes, I was thanking. Right, so I was thanking Eileen for making this comparison very easy for us to make by having the existing and proposed very, set up like this on one page so we could easily see it. And Ben, my request to you is to bring back to your firm as you're working with other architects and so on, if they could have, a sheet that does something like this, that's very helpful for the commission. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, we'll
Thanks
do.
a-
Thank you. Thanks
Yeah,
for the feedback.
Thanks very much. You're quite welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for your feedback. I appreciate it.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, let me my votes notes here. So that ends that hearing. The next, there are 2 other items on the general business category, and these are review of CPA applications where the applicants to this are applying for community preservation funding and are hoping to get support from the Historical Commission because the application in some way, shape, or form involves historic preservation. I believe the first one is the Bartlett Mole Frog Pond improvements, and I think I saw that Mr. Griffin was going to be talking to that. Is that correct?
Yes, I hope so.
Yep. All right. That's Mr. Charles or Chuck Griffin, and you are obviously unmuted. We can hear you, Chuck. I know we've talked about this before. But anyway, why don't you, and maybe first just ask commissioners, did everyone see the letter that had been submitted by, who was it? Katelyn, help me out here. That
The letter
Kim Turner.
submitted by
Yeah,
Kim
Kim.
Turner.
Yeah, Kim Turner, correct. I hope you all had a chance to see that. She describes what's going on here, and she also explains kind of the reasons behind the a bit unusual nature of this particular request of the CPA. So Chuck, why don't I let you go ahead and make your case here, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, other commissioners, for allowing us to appear in front of you. The parks received your approval last year for this same work on Frog Pond. As you read from Kim Turner's letter, she updated you in the fact that what we have now is more engineering drawings. You see in this picture that Katelyn has pulled up, this pea soup in the middle is Frog Pond at the head of Green Street. I'm sure you all know the location. Second slide, Katelyn. The lower right picture there is the way the Bartlett Mall looked in 1890. We're trying to restore it to that look. It's a goal of the Parks Commission, actually our #1 goal generally. And this has come up about the water, and this application has nothing to do with anything except the water quality at Frog Pond. You'll see in the upper right-hand corner, there's a boat in that picture. Most of us that have lived here any time can remember that we used to be able to have skiffs on the water. And during Yankee homecoming and other events, people could boat and tip boats over, and it wasn't dangerous health-wise. The third picture, Katelyn. You can see here what's happening. The pond is dying. It's a stagnant water body and has pollution of various kinds in it. And the water level fluctuates, causing a great deal of difficulty year-round, whether or not a walkway like in the upper left is covered in water or usable. And on the lower right and the lower left, you can see this is the pond trying to die essentially on us with the algae blooms and hazardous algae in the water that can cause blisters on skin, and it's dangerous to people to be in and extremely unhealthy to animal life. So since you've read the piece from Kim, I'm really just here to answer questions. Anything you have, I'd be happy to address.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Thank you, Chuck. Couple of quick questions that I have. You implied in your presentation that there'd be some sort of circulation of water, because, or at least it mentions on this slide we're looking at right now, water kept at a constant level with well and outlet. So I understand, the problem of the stagnant nature of that water contributing so much to its degradation. So is there, and I know we had, there has been discussion of wells and such so forth to provide water. So, but I don't remember mentioning the outlet. Can you comment to that?
There has been change on that from the last time that we came in front of you. It turns out that this pond was used by the fire department for many years to fight fires, and became part of a system of piping that goes under High Street, down Green Street, and 3 laterals that go to the south over toward the mills. And that piping system still exists. It's 6-inch cast iron pipe. We haven't been able, we haven't had funds to be able to check it all out. We do know that by getting rid of the old faucet valves at the end here at Frog Pond, that the pipe underneath High Street and going down Green Street is intact. So we will be able to choose a height on this water and have it remain at that height. During high water, of course, that would act as a drain. And then during times of slow water, there's 1 or 2 wells that are planned to provide groundwater, not treated water, but groundwater to the pond.
Okay. All right. I see Commissioner Morgan has a hand raised. Did you have a question or comment, Joe?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I wanted to just share with my fellow commissioners some information that I've gathered just this week. The last time that Mr. Griffin presented, even though we all were in support of the project, clearly, I think in my opinion, it fully deserves our support. It's something that historically has been sort of on the bucket list for the city of Newburyport. And it's really sort of, in my mind, it's outrageous that the cleanup of this pond has not occurred much sooner. In fact, from my research, it actually was a goal of the original Mall Improvement Association, but they just probably had inadequate funds or what have you. But I would like to, one thing that bothered me was the proposal to install a granite curb. So Since this is appearing again in front of us, I decided to go over to the Museum of Old Newbury and ask to see the Charles Elliott archive. And if people will indulge me just a couple of minutes, I'd like to just read three items that I found that sort of points to, in my opinion, a validation of the installation for this curb. Now, the curb may not be part of this particular scope, the 2022 proposed CPA projects, but I believe it was at least partially proposed in our last session in 2021. And I mean, one question is, where does the final balance of funds come from for that granted installation? But I would just like to go back and share, because I find it interesting, the sequence that occurred, first of all, with Charles Elliott's, the landscape architect's design back in 1887. And October 1st of that year, he writes to the Mall Improvement Association or others. I'm not sure the association was actually formed at that time, but certainly to whoever was that he was dealing with in the city. He says, in the spring, the pond stands some feet above its average summer level. In dry seasons, its area shrinks considerably. All this forbids enclosing it with a curb. And then between brackets, he says, the ordinary curbed pond of a public garden is fed from the town water supply and maintained at one level by means of an overflow gate. So he's making a distinction there between a public garden and I guess a park, which I think this would be a park. So this sort of led me to think, also knowing when you look at the emerald necklace and you look at his follow-up work with the firm of Olmsted and Elliott, which he was brought into just a few years after this, I think in 1894 or 1893, you would think that they're in their naturalistic design, their philosophy, that the curb would not really be, it would be out of place in this kind of setting. But then I went on and I found a letter from the secretary of the Mall Improvement Association. I believe it was from April 23rd of 1889, where they are giving Charles Elliott the go-ahead. They're basically saying, we want to proceed, we want to commence with the work, we want to get bids, we want to get final estimates and bids, presumably. And we also want to ascertain the cost for curbing around the pond. So this basically says that even though Charles Elliott was advocating for no curb based on the variability of the water level, because of the kettle pond nature of this reservoir, the city still they were still interested in having a curb, maybe with the future prospect of being able to control that level, the water level. Okay, and then the final item was I believe it's the final report post-construction of the park, which is probably in late 1889, maybe 1890, where there's an annual report to the city from the Mall Improvement Association. And I'm quoting here, this was a printed document. It says, the edge of this beach toward the pond was protected, and they're describing the design as far as possible, and the design and the installation, by coarser material, and in many places it was covered with stones as a defense against the washing of the water. This was not expected to be entirely adequate to the purpose, but was the best thing that could be done under the circumstances, and it is sincerely hoped that in the near future it may become possible to substantially enclose the pond with a heavy granite curb. And see, bear with me here because I'm reading from photographs of these documents, and thus effectively prevent the further erosion of the beach. Okay, so my sense is that there was always a desire of the patrons for this project to enclose the pond, and for two reasons. One was to protect against erosion, but certainly I think they were, my sense is they were envisioning a time when the water level might be controlled, and that the curb would actually provide an aesthetic that at the time was desired. So I don't know, I would ask Mr. Griffin to comment on those things, but I feel that actually I've been ambivalent about this in my mind, but I feel more comfortable having gone and looked at it. I do feel that it was something that maybe not what the landscape architect was thinking, but it's something that the people of the town were thinking strongly about, and that they desired as a part of this project back in 1889. And I'll leave it there, but I do have a couple of follow-up questions afterward.
Okay. Well, you're still the only one with a hand up. You want to go ahead and ask your, well, let me first ask Mr. Griffin. Chair, do you want to respond in any way to that? I know you've done a lot of research on the history of the Frog Pond area.
Yes, I'm thrilled with what Joe Morgan found, and I know those documents, and it's wonderful to hold the originals in your hand, isn't it, Joe? We don't only disagree on one really minor point. In that initial letter, I think September something, like you say, 87, he's not feeling wonderful in that sentence when he says the cities of Europe, or makes the reference to his travels. He had just gotten back, by the way, from a year and a half in Europe, clear into Russia. And he said that water effects in public spaces are edged and have a water supply. And he said, since it almost says, I can hear it, I guess maybe because I'm an architect, I can almost hear his annoyance with this. He says, well, since we can't do any of that here, I guess we just call it a beach. And I agree with you. The later events prove the fact that not only I think he wanted it badly, so did the city and the Mal-Improvement Association. Further, I would have you go one step further. Arthur Shercliffe, another very famous landscape architect who designed, he was a most significant landscape architect of his day, and he did Colonial Williamsburg for the Rockefellers, the cherry job of the day. And his maps downstairs hanging in the office outside the mayor's office is a print of that. And he's asking in letters and in other forms that I just found, for granite, for an edge to go around this pond. It's been seen as a need by any person who's thought about this much since 1887 at a minimum. I congratulate you for your research.
Thank you, Chuck. Yeah, and I certainly can see where having an influx of fresh water and an exit for the water is really going to be necessary, not just for the level, but for the health of the ecosystem there. So, Joe, why don't you go ahead and proceed to the other comments, because I see you're still the only hand up.
Yes. Mr. Griffin, I did see I think they were the 1935 drawings from Shercliffe, and he proposes many improvements. Again, unfortunately, it looks like the city of Newburyport did not have the funds to actually implement many of them, but certainly the granite border was one of those items that he proposed. As far as the scope that is included in this package, based on my my summary reading of the estimates, it is mainly engineering items and systems and components, but there are a couple that might impact architecture. So there is a vault that's going to exist with all the pumps, filters, and treatment equipment. And it's going to be tied into street power and data and everything. It's going to be quite a sophisticated system for not just for cleaning the pond, but it's there. You could actually claim that they're life safety systems for anticipated animal life that may come back, or maybe at this point after the cleanup be actually, it may be a viable it might habitat for various fish, amphibians, or whatever. So presumably that vault's going to be fairly sizable. It's noted that it's going to be located presumably in architectural manner. It's going to be dug into the hillside, maybe on the High Street edge. And I just want to make sure that it will be more or less camouflaged or disguised from view. And then the other thing that's on my mind is trees. What about the balance of the trees for planting these alleys that are also, I think, proposed somewhere in the text? So that's question number 2. And question 3, is there any possibility that there is going to be an endowment or some sort of a set aside for cleaning and maintenance and overall, just because I mean, all this fancy equipment, it's going to break down, it's going to wear out. Who pays for that when it breaks down and wears out? And those are my questions. Thank you.
Answering the last question first, I don't believe that we can get CPC money for maintenance. So I think that will be a Parks Department expense going forward. Bartlett Mall doesn't consume much of the park's money. It's mown, sticks are picked up, and it's prepared for several of the town's functions during the year. So yes, there's electric power that's going to be required to pump water plainly. Let me back up. I don't know if your point about where the wells are located, the pumps are located. I have not yet received the presentation from the engineers. And of course, I'll be very sensitive to that issue. I agree it's important because we'd like to have it end up the way it is in that lower right picture on this slide. The trees are a different function. That gets back to the effort I and others have been making to restore it to 1890. There's a whole bunch of trees that will be planted. We've already removed some moved trees out of the cherry trees that were in the bottom and a beech tree at the bottom. That's not in any part of the CPC application, but happy to talk to you about it whenever you like. Have I answered your questions?
You have indeed. Thank you very much. I'm sure we'll have opportunities to follow up on the final plans.
I encourage you to come to the Parks meeting when the engineers present.
Thank you very much. Yes.
So don't forget to put your hand down, Joe, when you're all done. And so I just want to be clear. So Chuck, like in the notes that our planning administrator gave us, it said that it was Bartlett Mall, Frog Pond in Bartlett Mall or Mal. And by the way, when you say mal improvements, make sure you make it 2 words. Otherwise, it sounds like you're doing the opposite of improving. Anyway, including bordering the pond with granite in order to maintain a clean edge. So is the granite part of this scope of this particular application or not?
Not today. I don't have the money for it.
Okay, so what you're asking the CPA to approve with this round 2022 or whatever it is just this rather extensive funding. The figures I saw cited was 2.79 million, which would, if I understand the nature of this, how they want to do this is to bond it, secure it against future commitments from the CPC. Is that about right?
That's right.
Okay. Okay, any other comments from my fellow commissioners? You can either raise your hand or just speak up. like to know how you feel, because what the next thing I'm going to ask for is if someone would like to make a motion that the way what we usually do is we'll have a motion to authorize the chair to draft a letter of support, which sometimes is a letter or sometimes it's an email to the Community Preservation Act Committee that does the authorization of these funds. And I should mention that Joe is the representative of the Historical Commission on that committee. And Joe, thanks so much for that research you did. That was very, very helpful to kind of understanding some of the historical context here. And, where this clearly is an application that is very heavily centered around historic preservation, that was very helpful. So thanks so much for doing that.
That's my pleasure, Chair. But I think what you've brought up is an important point, that when we reviewed this project last year, a portion of the granite, I believe curbing was in the project. And I think that there was a hope that additional funds could be raised to complete that portion of the project. Now, I don't know what, given that, I don't know what future fundraising or fund sources, Mr. Griffin is thinking about here in order to complete that part of the project, or is it not your intent to go forward with that now, Mr. Griffin?
No, it's very much my intent to go forward. In my own mind, this will not be a fully successful project unless we have this edged. To spend almost $3 million and end up with a gravel edge, I think would be pathetic. There are sources of some money, some serious money that we are making application for, and I'd rather not speak to that if you don't mind. There is a plan of how to go after the money, and we think we can secure the funds. But you're right, we received, I think it was 115,000, Joe, as part of last year's 312, and that money was diverted to engineering costs, and we received approval, if you might recall, on the vote, the CPC, but you weren't a part of it then, I don't think. But we told the CPC we may need to move funds around. So all the money that was donated went to engineers, with the exception of a fountain, the removal, repair, and replacement of the fountain, and the price I had from Rowley's people, Cassidy Brothers, is intact. That money is kept separate.
Okay. Thank you. I see. Peter McNamee, did you want to ask a question or make a comment?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just following on the heels of the last few things said, Mr. Griffin, you say that there will be a presentation on the engineering for the project. Is this curbing part of that engineering, even if it's not anticipated that it's going to be part of the project immediately at this phase? Is the curbing going to be engineered at least?
Well, I've provided engineering and have gone to quarries and have the pricing from the quarry pricing from 6 quarries. And the engineering takes it down to a full 20-inch wide foundation, 4 feet high, to set the stones on and set them with a laser, and it would be a gorgeous piece of work. I do not believe that the last report I saw that the engineers did not include that in their scope of work.
So that portion of the project isn't really anticipated. It's on a wish list at this point.
Yes, a strong wish list by the Parks Commission. This park, by the way, and getting it fixed, the water, is the #1 item on the Parks Commission's wish list.
Yeah.
And we have 27 parks, it's.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Were you not finished, Peter?
Just one follow-up question. Yeah. Is it unreasonable for us to have to lend our support conditional on that curbing being engineered into the project so that it's less of a wish list item as much as it's part of the scope of the project?
I would prefer to thank you for that. I would prefer to come back and ask you for a letter on that at another time. I'm worried that any confusion about this makes it too easy to lessen our chance to get these funds.
Well, it does raise one question for me, Chuck, and that's that, is it, how safe is it to assume that they'll be able to put in the foundation you just described and these granite stones without disturbing, this lining that's, what do they call it? The lining and all of that stuff, that the membrane and all of that.
Good point. What I'm proposing to do at the bare minimum is put the foundation in. That's $200,000. And that's 1,200 feet long, and get that foundation as reinforced with steel and everything, and have that be the edge, the concrete. And then at worst case, then put the granite on top of that for the very reason that you just pointed out, Mr. Chairman, is that I would not want to get into the pond after the fact, but we could always set beautiful edging stones, 20 by 30 inches, 6 foot long later from the sidewalks.
I see.
And hold the membrane down.
Right. Okay, did I interrupt someone else? Was there another commissioner that kind of saw hands coming and going? I'm not sure if anyone still had a comment. Okay, not hearing any. Would the only last comment I'll make is that we're and Chuck, this slide we're looking at with the 4 photographs, the one, and what was the date of the one in the lower right, the historic one?
1889, I believe, or it might be 1890.
Okay, and in the upper right, where the little boat is on the
I don't know the date of that picture. It's not one of mine.
Okay.
I assume it's something that Kim has.
Okay, and because when you were talking, I do recall those canoe battles that used to take place in Yankee Homecoming, and it is a sad thing that the water is so bad now that you can't even do that. At any rate, so I would just say that this frog pond and the courthouse there, especially this aspect of it where it still has that band of the contrasting color is one of the and the fountain, the trees, particularly in the autumn season and so forth, is, if not the most, certainly one of the most photographed and noted places in the city of Newburyport. And that the whole conglomeration with the fountain, the courthouse, the grassy, the landscaping and the pond, it's just, and that pond has been in Newburyport since, well, I've never seen an early map that didn't have it, so it apparently goes way back. Anyway, so that'll end my comments. Is there anyone who would care to make a motion to authorize the chair to draft a letter supporting this project with the CPC?
So move. Mark Sanborn.
Mark. Okay, thank you, Mark. Is there a second for that?
Seconded, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, Andrew Bernhardt, your vote on that? This is a motion to authorize me to draft a letter.
Yes,
supporting.
absolutely.
Okay. Yep. Thank you, Mark.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Christopher Fay.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks very much, Peter McNamee.
Yes.
Thank you, Joe Morgan.
Yes.
Thank you. And the chair is also in favor. I think we all kind of understand the importance of that particular. It's unfortunate that, these things cost so much money. Perhaps an ounce of prevention could have been worth a pound of cure back in the day, but what's past is past, and we just have to deal with what we have to work with now. So good luck, Chuck, and the rest of the Parks Department in getting this project, continuing to move. I hope I'm like, what, 71 now? I hope I'm around to see it to either completion or near completion. Okay, we have another. So thank you for coming in tonight and talking to us, Mr. Griffin. We have another CPC applicant or CPI application. This is regarding tree preservation at the Old Hill Cemetery. And I think I saw Ms. Woodworth in the attendees list. Yep, she's still there. And you've been unmuted on our end, Glee, so you should be able to speak to us about this. Would you like to give us an overview of what it is you're doing and up there?
Yes, thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
All right. Again, my name's Glee Woodworth, 51 Prospect Street. I have worked at Oak Hill Cemetery since 2007, and I'm also on the Board of Trustees. We are proposing another heritage tree project and asking for a letter of support. The heritage trees of Oak Hill are some of the oldest and largest in Newburyport. Oak Hill is one of the first rural garden cemeteries that were designed by local citizens who were able to secure funds and planted over 260 species of shrubs and trees back in the 1860s. And dozens of those trees still remain in Oak Hill. We have over 100 trees that are at least 130 years old, and we have at least a dozen trees over 200 years old. According to the late owner of Northeast Shade Tree, the arborist Jeff Ott, and also current owner David Stedman, they say that this is one of the most impressive mixture of species in northern New England that they have seen. And they absolutely love coming into Oak Hill Cemetery. The location is a little confusing. Oak Hill is the State and Brown Street entrance where the Granite Chapel is, and also on Parker Street. And Oak Hill is about 30 acres large. You can see there on the map. Thank you, Katelyn. And about 30 acres large. It runs alongside the Clipper City Rail Trail. The public benefit, Oak Hill Cemetery has always been very popular, but it has increased over the past dozen years. And then since the rail trail has come in, we have dozens of people every day walking, jogging, and there's passive recreation, the bird watching. That's one of the best places for bird watching in the area. Sue McGrath of Newburyport Birders comes through along with Steve Grinley with groups. And that's because of all of the trees that we have. It's also educational. We have school groups come in. I've done over 50 tours, cemetery tours in the past 14 years. And we've had also horse-drawn wagon tours and lots of historical research. And we also have artists. The cemetery is private. We have an endowment that now is stable. How small town cities and the town cemeteries work is our income is burial lots and funerals. And we're doing okay with that, but there are two part-time workers, myself and the superintendent, Jim Smith. And we don't break even with that income. So we do need our endowment to help. But have been able to raise over $90,000 in grants. And included in that was back in 2008 and 9, a CPC grant over the 2 years, $35,000 for our heritage tree project. And Northeast Shade Tree, who specializes in heritage trees, and they've also worked in Atkinson Common. They also have some of the oldest and largest trees in Newburyport. They worked on several dozen back in 2008 and 9. If you remember, a few years after that, we had this big storm, and we had 80 and 90 mile an hour winds. Well, there were trees down all over Newburyport. We did lose about 7 trees in Oak Hill, but the trees that the Northeast worked on were all safe. And again, those were over 100, 200-year-old trees. And so that showed how valuable this work is. The tree work we did in 2020, again, the guys, they're strictly tree climbers. They don't use bucket trucks, and buckets could not reach where they're able to climb. And they worked on 20 trees. And one of those trees, they said that had to have been at least 300 years old. It was an oak tree, and that was, so that sapling was there prior to 1842 of the establishment of Oak Hill. What else? The Northeast Shade Tree guys are very animal friendly, bird friendly. They don't touch any limbs that have nests, whether it's squirrels or birds. And an example, they have donated over 3 days of work. They just love the cemetery. And there was one tree back in 2020 that was dead. It's about 30 yards from the main gate off of State and Brown, and quite tall. And I asked the guys, Matt and Matt, if they could just lop off the top and just leave the trunk. And we did that back 2008 and 9 for the purpose of animals, insects, wood ducks, owls, and so forth. So they lopped off, and there were at least 3, 4 holes. And we, of course, hoping, and Sue McGrath, the bird, we're just hoping that someone might come and move in. And sure enough, we have a little gray screech owl living in the top hole and making a nest. And we also have a red screech owl too, further in the cemetery. So that's overall. It's a very, very popular cemetery that people visit, and there's just nothing but compliments about how beautiful the trees are. If you have not come in to Oak Hill, I encourage you, when you see the rhododendrons starting to bloom, take a drive or walk through. It's absolutely beautiful. So do you have any questions?
Sorry. Yeah, Glenn here. I have a couple of quick questions, Glee.
Yeah.
You said this, well, first of all, you gave this a name, some kind of a, most cemeteries don't have so many trees and stuff. And when you, in the beginning, what did you call it? A certain type of cemetery?
It's a rural garden landscape cemetery. So what that means is the Old Hill burying ground behind the Mall. That's
Right.
the hill, and it's
Right.
a lot of stones. What makes
Right.
Oak Hill different is that there are streets, there are roads and paths,
Mm-hmm.
the entire cemetery. And
Mhm.
so it was not only for those who passed on, but it's also for the living. It's encouraging those folks to visit and take some time and enjoy themselves.
Right. Okay. Thanks for clarifying that. And yeah, it's clear that, just from these pictures, but I've been up there many times, and when one you hear the word cemetery, you kind of automatically picture essentially a field with headstones and things.
Right.
Oak Hill is quite different, as you've said, and you can see it in these photographs. It is and you're right. It is a lovely place to stroll through. It's kind of calming in some. I can't quite explain it, but I'm sure you've noticed the same thing. The other question I have is, you said it was privately owned, and that kind of raised a red flag for me, because typically CPC funds are for city-owned. So how is what's the deal with that? Is there some?
Well, it's private, meaning the city doesn't own it. So it's managed by a board of trustees, and technically the proprietors of Oak Hill, which are the people who have burial lots there.
Oh, I see.
Technically, so the board represents all of those burial lot owners.
Right. Yeah, I guess in the case of a cemetery, there's probably hundreds, if not thousands, of quote unquote owners, right? Because they actually buy, they're deeded a little plot, right?
Right.
Yeah, okay, got it. It didn't even occur to me, but makes perfect sense. Okay, how about from my fellow commissioners? Does anyone have a question, comment, thought about this before we discuss whether or not we want to authorize the chair to write a letter of support? It's very quiet.
I'll just comment that this is a lovely place that deserves all the support it can get.
Yeah, it's kind of in your neighborhood, isn't it, Mark? You don't, but you don't
My
abut to it, right?
backyard.
What's that?
My backyard,
Does your property abut to the cemetery?
almost.
Yeah. I think it's just a little bit of, yeah. Oh, yeah, Mark is on State Street, excuse me, High Street, just around the corner. Okay, yeah, thanks for that comment, Mark. I think that, and I noticed it is listed in the state and national registers of historic places. When did you say that the cemetery was founded, Glee?
It was established in 1842.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, if there's no other comments, would anyone care to make a motion to authorize the chair to draft a letter of support for this application?
I'll make that motion. This is Chris. I'll make a
Okay.
motion to authorize the chair to write a letter in support of this application.
Thank you, Chris. Is there a second?
I'll second that,
Seconded.
Peter.
Okay. I think I heard
Peter.
Peter first. Thanks. All right. Andrew Bernhardt, your vote on this.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew. Mark Syndrome.
Yes.
Thank you. Christopher Fay.
Yes.
Thank you. Peter McNamee.
Yes.
Thank you. Christopher. Sorry. My brain isn't firing on all
Joe
cylinders
Morgan,
tonight.
yes.
Yeah. I was getting there, Joe. You're a yes. Okay. The chair is also hopes that this project succeeds. Okay. So very good. That ends those formal hearings. Glee, thank you for coming out tonight and
Thank you.
giving us your
Everyone.
presentation. What was that?
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome, and thanks for all the work you do around town. For those who don't know, next time you see a posting of a talk by Glee, she does a number of talks besides the old Oak Hill Cemetery tours. She does like Newburyport Then and Now, and a lot of other things, and they're very much well worth checking out.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Next order of business is to approve the minutes from the last meeting, which was March 10th. Is someone care to make a motion to approve those? Yes, no?
Yes, I'll move to I move to approve the minutes from our March 3rd
10th.
meeting.
10th.
10th, sorry. Okay, 10th.
Yep.
yes.
Thank you, Joe. Is there a second?
I'll second that, Chris.
Okay. Yep. Thank you, Chris. You're coming through. Did you change your thing, Chris? You're coming through especially loud and clear tonight.
I'm just moving around. Trying to
Okay.
find a hotspot.
Okay. Andrew? Oh, actually, Andrew, you have to
Yes.
abstain. You weren't here. Okay.
I
Mark,
wasn't here, so.
right. Mark Syndrome?
I wasn't there either.
Oh, that's right. That's right. You weren't. Christopher Fay?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Me, yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Thank you. Joe Morgan?
Yes.
Okay, the chair approves that too. So we do have 4 affirmative votes, so we can approve those. I don't have any updates. I don't, Andy, if you're still here, yeah, did you have any updates anything you want to say, or shall we just move on to adjournment?
Sorry, Chair, having a problem on muting. No, I don't have anything to provide at this time unless the members have any questions about anything specific.
Yes, I have a question, Chair Richards and Director Port. What's the status on the Form B updates? We had a consultant, or that was being bid, or I don't know. Is that going forward? I noticed that's a CPA grant actually that's open.
Yep, that's correct. It's been partly in my court to finalize an RFP to go out for consultants. Based on the pandemic, the state has given an extra year for the project to be completed. So I need to finalize the version of that RFP with input from both the chair and former vice chair Patricia Pecknick. We'll review that, confirm with the state that they don't have anything additional to add or adjust in that, and then procure the consultant to do the Form Bs, at which point the Historical Commission will be asked to, I think, for lack of a better term, proof the Form Bs prepared by the.
Okay, so in a way, we got lucky on the pandemic there, Andy, that we got an extra year to kind of get our act together on this, get everything put in place. So that's kind of good news. Thanks for bringing that up, Joe. The last I'd heard, I do occasionally ask pester Andy about that, and the last I heard was that he was checking into whether we had more time, and so that's good to hear that we do.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you.
You're quite welcome. Any other questions or anything?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Just one quick thing, and this is optional. Andrew, do you want to say anything about yourself to the rest of the crew here? So about anything particular?
Sure.
It's totally up to you.
I moved here. Yeah. Oh no, I'm very happy to. I moved here. Now it's almost coming up a year, and I'm have been a process improvement executive type coach working in all sorts of industries, and there's more to my history. Obviously, I'm an old man. I'm 65 years old, and I'm looking to figure out what I'm going to be doing next, and I like to add value. So I really look forward to working with you gentlemen.
65 is not old.
That's true. Actually, I'm 66. I gave myself a free year tonight.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Indeed.
Welcome to the group.
Welcome.
Welcome to the group.
And I'll share with the board that Andrew and I spent about an hour at the Battlegrounds coffee house, whatever, cafe, whatever you want to call it. And I tried to brief him on how these meetings ran, et cetera. And I'm very happy to have him on board, and someone with his particular background. And we also shared some of the reading materials that I think will be handy to help bring, expand his familiarity with both our history here in Newburyport and architectural history in general, and so on.
There you go.
So, yep. Looking forward. And
I'm doing my homework.
So So thanks very much for joining the commission. There are still 2 open chairs. Excuse me, open seats. That are what do they call them? I forget there's a term for it. There are members that attend but don't vote unless there's absences. So if there had been people here that were alternates, thank you. Alternates would have been able to vote because we are down a couple members tonight, or 1 member at least. What was I going to say? I'm meeting. New Mayor Sean Reardon is meeting with various members of commissions, especially the chairs, and so I think I got an invitation to meet with him. I think it's either Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, so it'll be interesting to see that. And I did actually notice, maybe you noticed it too, Andy, he was briefly for about the first third or so of the meeting, he was in the attendee list. I saw Mayor Reardon in there, so that was interesting.
Yeah, he may have had to run to something else, but I know he was patching in to get a flavor of the meeting, at least at a bare minimum.
Yep. So I hope. So now, Mark, I think we're ready for the motion you were attempted to make a few minutes ago.
Well, we wanted to know about Andy. Absolutely.
Do you ever go by Andy? I've been calling you Andrew because that's the term you've been using.
I like Andrew. You could call the other Andrew Andy. He didn't seem to mind.
Yes. Yeah. Andy is Andy Port. Andrew is.
You could do Andy. I'm Andrew.
There you go. Okay. So Mark, did you, shall we consider your motion made to adjourn?
If you would, please.
Okay. Is it seconded?
I'll second it. It's Peter.
Thank you, Peter. Okay. Andrew, your vote on that?
Yes.
Okay. Mark?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
And Joe?
Yes.
And chair is yes. Well, thank you very much once again for your time and attention and your willingness to serve on the behalf of the city. That concludes tonight's meeting, and I bid you all a good night.
Good night.
Thank you,
All right.
everyone. Bye, good night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, Kayla.